think that's something that's really important for not only like our fans to know, but for everyone to know, is that it's important when you're in, in relationships, don't completely give everything you've got to the other person, because then you're putting all your eggs in one basket. Like, that person is their own person, you're your own person. And I became, kind of just engulfed. I remember being in the studio with Dan Nigro and Gabe Simon, and I remember Gabe started just jamming on a piano that Dan had in his house. He started coming up with these melodies, and I was like, oh my God, I felt so inspired. So I had my computer out, and I just started jotting down like a ton of lyrics, just like kind of word vomiting, just like everything that I was feeling at the time. I kind of love that the song sounds celebratory, like I'm better by myself, it's all good, like I'm fine on my own. There may be something in the water over here in California. It's got me feeling like I'm better off alone. It's almost a little satirical, where it's like, maybe it's the people, maybe it's something, just kind of like trying to find the reason that things might not be going well. And ultimately, I think what it's all about is the self-care thing. You have to understand your boundaries, understand your values, understand your morals, and really just like stay true to those. Maybe it's the way you used me, watered down my love, abused me, and you'd always criticize me on the phone. It wasn't a lyric that was just, let me throw that in because it rhymes. It was very like specific to like my situation, because I would be on tour and consistently fighting. And I had to realize, this is not how people should be treated. And it took a long time. I really didn't think that I deserved love. Ooh, would you kill me if I told you that I never wanna speak to you? 'Cause when I'm on my own, I feel alive. And there's nothing wrong with crying, but my empathy is dying, 'cause we never were that good, we'd always fight. There were a lot of times where I would get calls and the other person would be like crying on the phone, and I have this inclination to, just want to reach out and just want to help everybody. And when someone's feeling down, I feel like really helpless if I can't do anything and like stuff like that. So that was kind of a lyric alluding to that, just like, there's nothing wrong with you crying about this, and I've cried about it too, but this just wasn't good for us. When I don't have somebody that in a relationship that would go to bat for me, I have to understand that, and I have to realize, okay, that's not the person that's gonna look out for me, and that's okay, or maybe that's not okay. I have to really check in with myself and see what I feel comfortable with. I'm better by myself. I'm better when there's no you in my life. When I'm feeling alone, this is kind of funny and weird, but like I like to go on Craigslist and read some of the like missed connections. I think those are so beautiful. Like, I know that's such a weird thing to do when you're alone, but like I definitely love doing that, just because I'm a big romantic. So like when someone's like, you had black hair and blue eyes, and like, we saw each other on the train, or like whatever it is, I think that's so fun to just like look at that and be like, oh, that was a moment for two people. I'm better by myself. I'm better by myself. You're no good for my health. I'm better by myself. I think something that's super important to all of us in the band is touching on the fact that mental health there shouldn't be so much stigma around it. I think it's something that should be talked about. I think it's something that is really important to aid and to like, take care of. We're such delicate creatures, and if we don't think that we're in a good spot, sometimes we just like muscle through it or white knuckle it, and sometimes that's just not the best for us. Everything you do just wears me down. It's getting old, I'm turned around. Feels like you're just wasting me away. You're twisting me in all of these different directions. I don't know what's what's really going on, what's true, what's not. You know, there was a moment where I realized that kind of my reality had kind of been flipped upside down because the person that I was seeing had been seeing someone else while we were together, you know, like, and that was just like the most emotional pain that I've experienced thus far. Hopefully nothing worse happens, but that was like really difficult for me, you know, and that's kind of where that lyric came from. When you choose to terrorize me, any confidence inside me dies, you suffocate me with the things you say. My self-esteem plummeted. You know, I had like no confidence. Like I said, I was in a bad headspace. I had to retrain myself. You know, I had a lot of these core beliefs that were like, you know, not being good enough, not being this enough, not being whatever enough. And that's something that, you know, I still work on, but I'm a lot more confident now. I'm better by myself. I'm better when there's no you in my life. You're no good for my health. You're no good for my troubled state of mind. Ooh. From every experience, I feel like, you know, there's a song that can come out of it and just like perfectly explain what happened. I know that there were definitely times where I was the bad guy, and it was just because it was like I didn't understand what love was, and I know that he didn't understand what love was either at the time, and we were both really lost. It was difficult to like let that go, you know, because you get into this cycle where you're like, oh, that's what I'm used to, that's what I deserve, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I feel like I really realized like this is able to change. You know, this is not a cycle that I need to be a part of.